I'm doing fine. And how are you?
I'm here. There's Orchel.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah, there's Orchel.
Yes, we can hear you all. What I don't know is who is in the boardroom helping us from the staff.
I mean, this is Morgan. Stephanie is clerking the meeting this evening, and we do have a quorum ready, so we're ready to go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Wonderful. Thank you, Morgan, for that. Well, good evening, everyone. Buenas tardes. Thank you for participating in Zoom to this meeting for the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, our Environmental Justice Advisory Group. All EJAG members are participating via Zoom. We'll do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation, also via Zoom. Before we begin, I want to review some important guidelines and general instructions before our meeting starts. Please silence other communication devices so we don't get any disruption to the meeting. During the meeting, all public participants, except for the EJAG members and district staff, will be placed in mute by the host and will only be unmuted when it's time for public comment. And only EJAG and members and staff will be visible in via Zoom. And with that, welcome everyone, and I will call the meeting to order, being 5:36 p.m. And I'll ask the clerk for roll call, please.
Okay, Ms. Martinez,
Aye.
Dr. Baines, Mr. Freitas, Ms. Gutierrez, Mr. Brazil, Ms. Fialma,
Here.
Mr. Helm,
Here.
Mr. Williams,
Here.
Ms. Dean, Mr. O'Brien,
Here.
Mr. Cryer,
I am here.
Mr. Leba,
Good afternoon, I'm here.
Ms. Austin Tibbetts,
Here.
Mr. Cunha.
Good evening, I'm here.
Through the chair, we do have a quorum.
I'm muted. Thank you. So let's now give a couple of minutes so that we can review the minutes for August 25th meeting. I know there was already a correction via email. So Ned, do you want to say the changes that you see are required in the meeting minutes?
Yes, I think the minutes were fairly accurate. The only clarification, which was number 8, where we were talking about the goals and objectives. We approved the goal and objective of health considerations, and I believe we wanted it designated as goal and objective 1, not goal and objective 11.
I recall the same thing, but I welcome others if they have remember other.
Through the chair, I think we're fine with the correction that Ned's pointing out. There was maybe some discussion on it, but I recall it did get moved to item number 1 in our last deal. So I would support making that correction.
Okay, so we have a correction for the minute and also reflecting that Ned was in attendance to the meeting. That was the other correction. So with those changes, can someone move to approve our minutes?
I so move with the correct.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Cunha. Who was the second?
Sorry, Tom with the second.
Thank you, Tom. So can we, I think we don't need to take a vote, it's just unanimous. Okay, so we're all in favor. We have approved our minutes with those changes. And now, is there any, this is a time for public comments. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment?
Through to the chair, we do not have any public attendees.
Okay, we'll come back again to the public later to see if anyone joins. I'll keep my remarks short. I just want to once again welcome everyone and just say that I don't know about you, but I reflect a lot after our last meeting and really went back to the drawing board and reminded myself of what I said when I applied to be part of the EJAG, what I said when I was I got the chance to reapply to be part of this committee. And I really value my membership here. And I just reminded myself that I'm here to be the voice of those environmental communities that we are all hoping to serve. You all, some of you are representatives because you are part of the CAC. But whatever the reason is that you are here, I'm sure that it is because you value helping the community, helping the Air District, and that I invite you all to keep that in mind, that we move forward having respectful meetings. We are never going to be 100% in agreement. Let's agree to disagree in a respectful way. And I am very glad that later on during our agenda, we will have time to go over again of rules of order of how we should conduct our meetings, and also a reminder of what is the purpose of EJAG. Some of you have been here for many, many years, and I think it was a good idea to just refresh our memories and be all on the same page. So with that, I will move us to the APCO deputy comments.
Good evening. Just a couple of quick items, mainly for housekeeping. One is that we still have the vacancy that we've had for several months now for the small ethnic business owner position. We've extended that deadline out through November 29th. We did send the application out along with the board packet to make sure, once again, you guys had that in case through your channels, you know of anybody who may be interested or have other groups that you work with that potentially could get the word out that we're looking for someone to fill that position. And then we're going to be continuing on our end to outreach that as well. It's always been a difficult position for us to fill, but we're hoping to get a good candidate here as we move into next year. And then the last point that I had to make today is that our next meeting is scheduled for January. There is a good chance that at that next meeting, we will no longer be Zooming and be remote anymore. We'll be back to in-person meetings for the members of the group. And so we'll be for those of you who have come on during this period of Zoom, how that usually works is we have 3 offices, one in Modesto, one in Bakersfield, and one here in Fresno. We still will have the VTC system, so people can attend any of those 3 offices that works best with their schedule and where they're at the time. But we'll have to see. And obviously, as we get closer, we'll let you guys know and apprise for sure. But for sure, it looks like at the absolute latest that we would be continuing on Zoom unless something changes would be February with the governor at least publicly coming out and saying that the COVID emergency declaration will expire in February of next year. But even before that, we still have to make certain findings, which we're not sure we'll be able to continue to meet going into next year. So I just wanted to make sure that we gave you sufficient notice of that, and we'll keep you apprised as we move forward.
Thank you. Any questions for Morgan? I see your hand raised. Derek, go ahead.
I'm just wondering if, Morgan, we're going to be bringing back the seafood buffet that you normally serve at the meetings.
We'll have to look into that.
Let
I'm sure
the
we'll be.
record- let
Yeah,
the
we'll
record
definitely be
reflect.
providing some kind of food. I'm just not sure if the surf and turf is still on the menu or not.
Well, let the record reflect that was something that was requested or mentioned. I have a quick question. Just can you repeat, Morgan, until when is the position open? You said November what?
November 29th right now. So about a month out.
And
Thank you.
Naimi?
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Cunha.
Yes, Morgan, on that business position, is that a person who owns a a business that he or she may hire employees. Is that what the position details? If I can remember, I'm trying to recollect the document. But is that what
Yeah,
it is?
It's a, I don't know that it necessarily, they potentially could be I guess a self-employed single employee type operation as well, but they have to be a small business owner that operates within a disadvantaged low income, community in the valley. And there's no limitation on which county that is. It can be anywhere within the valley.
Okay, great.
Although the other appointee that we currently have is from Kern County, so we often like to have representation, not just all in one area, but being as hard as it has been to get somebody, I think if we did get someone else from Kern County and we didn't have any other interest, we would definitely consider that.
I think there's a business person in Visalia that last week I had met with in a meeting, and they were very interested in the Air District and the activities that they have been learning about. So what I'll do is I will mention this to them, and I will send them your email if that would be okay, and then they can contact you. Would that be fine?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Nami.
Sure. Derek, another question?
Yeah, I guess I'm just kind of hoping that we're using the same common sense we had before. I mean, not like multi-level marketing people, Amway distributors or something like that, but real business owners. So I don't know. That's just my thought on that.
That's a great thought. Can I ask a follow-up question to that, Morgan? So you mentioned small business. Is there a specific definition of what does that mean? Like, small, large, I mean, it could be very relative.
Yeah, I don't think we have a specific definition that we've used. In the past, the people who have been a part of that group, have been people who own maybe an auto body shop, or people who have small construction operations, things of that nature. Now, I will note that just in terms of process, what ends up happening is, so once we do get hopefully more than one applicant for the position, we go through a process where district staff, along with generally some members of EJAG, will interview those people and come forward with a recommendation that ultimately goes to the board for the consideration. So hopefully we'll have several people to be able to evaluate, and we can take those different factors into consideration. But as it states, the membership qualification for that is not like overly prescriptive at this point in time. But usually those factors are weighed as we evaluate the individual candidates.
I would like to suggest that if you don't mind sharing with all of us the application, so we can send it to our networks. I know you have shared in the past, but it would be helpful to have it at the top of our inboxes.
Yeah, that went out last week with the agenda, but I know, Naimeen, we had an issue with your email address, so we'll make sure to resend that to you.
Great, thank you. Any more questions for Morgan before we move on? I don't see any. Thank you for that update, Morgan. So taking us to the next agenda item, we're going to hear an update on the rules.
Yes, thank you. Jessie Fierro, Director of Air Quality Planning here at the district. I just want to highlight a few workshops that have been going on either today or in the next couple of weeks. This afternoon, we held a workshop on the development of our 2022 ozone plan. That workshop was held at 3:30. There is an extensive PowerPoint presentation available about that item. I believe is actually in your packets, and it's also available on our workshops page on the district webpage. That presentation is available in both English and Spanish. The hope is that we will post another version of that plan soon. So let me walk you a little bit through the process. We published a draft version of the plan on October 14th, and that plan is currently open for public comment. We are requesting public comments by November 9th. We would then post a proposed plan, hopefully by November 15th, and then present that plan to our governing board on December 15th of 2022 for adoption. If approved by our board, the plan would then go to the California Air Resources Board Governing Board at their January hearing. And all those details are actually in the workshop presentation that we did today. Tomorrow afternoon at 1:30, the district will be holding a workshop on the best available retrofit control technology rule evaluation. That workshop can be attended via Zoom, and that information's on our workshops page. And then the last workshop I wanted to highlight today is that on Monday, November 7th at 3:30 p.m., we will be holding a workshop on conservation management practices. This was a commitment in our PM 2.5 plan. We're still in the research and gathering phase of this project, and so that workshop would go over the research we've gathered so far and next steps for that. And that concludes my update today, but I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Before I ask others, can you repeat the date for the conservation management practice workshop?
Absolutely. It is Monday, November 7th at 3:30 p.m. and you can attend that via Zoom.
Do you have a flyer or something that you can send us, or the link to the Zoom?
Sure, there is a public notice, and I can work through the clerk and Morgan to get that sent out to you.
Thank you. Richard?
Yes, I've noticed that the Air Board rejected most of the Valley's PM 2.5 plan, their sustainable community strategy. Have you provided any guidance other than just a rejection?
The sustainable community strategy, I'm not sure about.
Yeah, I'm not,
SBS 375.
yeah, that's actually CARB. That's not the Air District that takes those actions. And so we don't have a representative here from CARB today that could talk to that. But potentially we could try to get somebody here at a future meeting to talk about that.
Thank you.
Ned?
Yes, thank you. I did try to read through some of this, and I always encourage you folks to, of course, at the beginning, give us a little bit of the health impacts as we go from 84 to 75 parts per billion to 70 parts per billion, realizing it relates to some other emissions and exposure. So I think it always helps to see a very clear statement. I mean, I understand the national ambient air quality standards, but I think for us to really appreciate the health significance, to include that in the presentation. The other thing is, like with the PM 2.5 SIP, which apparently is being rejected, a topic to be discussed in the future. That was going to cost $5 billion for, fairly small changes. So again, same thing here. Can we, when you make the presentations in the future, sort of quantify what are the costs equivalent to the $5 billion costs for the PM 2.5 SIP in the Valley? And then, there's a lot of stuff here, but boy, those are two important things: health effects and costs. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ned. Any reactions, Jerry?
No other comments at this time. Thank you for the feedback.
Well, I don't know where they're at, you know what I mean? But that's the kind of stuff that irritates me. Yeah. Because people gave it to us, to the force, so we would have it for functions to use for things. But we don't have that.
Well, I say when they donate something to the fort, there should be a record.
Thank you. Yes, I think it was. Excuse me, Orchel, do you want to make a public question or something?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, go ahead.
On that, if we can add, what's the historic in the past, the historic on a PM 5 or 2.5? It was a historic in the past, say 50 years, and where we are now, so we get a chance to see, or we are making improvement, and if it is worth we're going the right direction on it. I know we're a lot of people are trying very hard to eliminate dust and all that in the fields and stuff in the cities, trying to do their part, trying to eliminate. But are we doing any good? The money we're spending, is it making a dent into it? That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Sure. I don't know, Morgan, you want to address this question, or Jerry?
I think in general, we definitely try to talk about the progress that we're making. We make several presentations each year with our governing board, as well as with EJAG and the CAC. And usually, as part of the plan, we will include the progress that's being made in terms of, in addition to the progress that we're forecasting will be made as part of the strategy that we're putting in place with the plan. And so that's definitely something that's included. That's something that we evaluate, and we agree that we think it's always important to while recognizing that there's a big challenge remaining that we have to do to bring the valley into attainment, but it's also important to to tell the story in terms of what the significant investments, both in private and public funds, have done in terms of improving air quality in the valley.
May I add, sometimes there's some times we have huge storms that come through here and make a lot of dust storms. Will that be counted? Or would that be kind of left out as an aberration? And also, when they do almonds and walnuts, when they shake the trees and they sweep it and all that, there's a lot of dust clouds there. That would be like a every year historic area where it's more higher the PM factor.
Yeah, maybe the second one first, in terms of harvesting. That is something that gets accounted for, and we try to put strategies in place to help with that. And we have a very successful grant program that we've been operating for a couple of years that provides pretty significant funding for growers to basically switch out their equipment to, I think even to custom harvesters as well, to be able to switch out their equipment to newer low dust technology. And that's been a very successful, program over the years. We're still, obviously fighting for more funding. It's a very oversubscribed program, but we continue to work with the agricultural partners to advance that. In terms of on the storm front, there are provisions under the Clean Air Act for what are called exceptional events, and oftentimes storms bring windblown dust at times, and provided a whole host of things are in place. I mean, you have to make sure that you have, you're fulfilling your obligations, you have appropriate, measures in place and other things. There are pathways for the EPA to not consider potential exceedances resulting from exceptional events such as windblown dust in evaluating or in counting those against your attainment demonstrations. But at the end of the day, I mean, those are still emissions that are in the air that may have, health consequences, and so we do everything that we can, even during those periods, to try to mitigate what those emissions and what those impacts may be.
Thank you very much. I know we do is when we have windstorms come, because we don't want our crops get affected, we turn our sprinklers on to help mitigate the wind that goes across the property. That's some of the things that we're doing as growers, and many of us try to do that because not because we're trying to eliminate the PMP, but we're trying to save our crops and keep the dust on the land from blowing away.
Thank you for that comment and observation. Anything else, or are we ready to move on? I don't see any hands. So as promised, we are getting an overview or a reminder of the meeting rules of order. So please, Morgan, who will be the person presenting?
Yeah, Annette Bellatori, who's our counsel here at the district, is here this evening to talk about this item.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here to present to you this evening. We thought it was a good time to provide just a little overview on basic meeting rules of order. And I will be the first to admit that I am no expert on parliamentary procedure or rules of order, but I am able to, give us all a brief discussion of some of the basic things that are really important that I think can help, if followed, can help us all conduct a much smoother, orderly meeting. So as an overview, the chair earlier, I heard the chair ask for a reminder of what the purpose of EJAG is. And according to your bylaws, the purpose of EJAG is to serve as a forum to gather public input and enhance public participation with implementation of the district's environmental justice strategy. And that EJAG's mission is to advise the district on how to integrate environmental justice principles into all programs, policies, and activities of the district. And so Robert's Rules of Order have been adopted by EJAG as part of your bylaws. And if followed, they can really be an effective and powerful tool to enable the protection of each member's rights as it relates to participation in this body. The purpose of Robert's Rules is to conduct business at meetings in a very orderly and productive fashion while promoting a deliberative process of full and free discussion. They can be used as a shield to protect each member's rights and as an alternatively, or the flip side of that same coin, as a sword to champion each member's interests. A nifty little quote that I found in Robert's Rules that I carry a copy of. It's pretty dog-eared, and I consult with it on a somewhat regular basis. But within Robert's Rules, there's a nice little quote that talks about the purpose of the rules. Because the right of an individual to do as he or she pleases is incompatible with the interest of the group, there must be rules that to some degree restrain the individual in order to accomplish the purposes of the group. And so each member's goal as part of this body is to uphold the objectives of the organization as described in your bylaws and to protect the rights of the organization's members. And you can do that through application of Robert's Rules. Okay, so the presiding officer, to start with, has a very, very important role in directing the meeting and enabling the effective use of Robert's Rules of Order. The chair is responsible for essentially the entire flow and conduct of an entire meeting. And so just an overview, the main duties of the chair is to call the meeting to order, to adhere to the agenda, to recognize members to speak, to moderate the discussion, to enforce the observance of order and decorum, and to ensure that the will of the board as a whole is carried out. Okay, so now what are some basic protocols of board facilitation? One very important protocol is that only one person should be speaking at a time. Even if the discussion becomes heated, it's necessary for maintaining proper decorum. A speaker must be recognized by the chair before speaking. If you have not been called upon, then it is your duty to be quiet. A speaker may not speak again on a particular item until all others wishing to speak on that item are called upon first. And so that is just, part of the orderly process of debate and decorum is that if you wish to speak, you indicate by raising your hand that you wish to speak. You wait for the chair to call upon you, and on any particular item, all members who wish to speak should get their chance first before the chair comes back and calls on somebody else again for a second time. And so your goal should be to support the chair's efforts to guarantee speaker rights by following this protocol. Another protocol is that all comments are made through the chair. The purpose of the body is not to debate with each other, but it's to deliberate as a body. Therefore, all comments should be addressed to the chair and avoiding all personal comments, never alluding to other members by name where possible to avoid it, nor to the motives of members. Comments are confined to the merits of the current issue or subject at hand. The immediately pending question is the only topic that should be discussed, and anything that is not relevant to the particular and immediate question or issue at hand should not be raised or discussed. Another protocol is that members have no right to complain, only the right to discuss or deliberate in a relevant way and to make motions. There should be no cross conversations or interruptions. Again, the order flows through the chair, and so individual members should not be speaking directly to one another while the meeting is in session. Again, orderly facilitation calls for raising your hand and waiting to be recognized by the chair before speaking. No criticism or discussion that is personal to other members, including praise or compliments, as well as criticism. The purpose of the body is not to be personal towards each other. It's to facilitate the purpose of the EJAG as a whole. And so there really is no reason to either criticize or compliment, in a personal way, individual board members. And then finally, all rules of order must be respected and obeyed. And if everyone kind of follows these basic protocols, the meetings, should go much smoothly. Okay, there's many different types of motions within Robert's rules, and we're just going to go over the two main types of motions, a main motion and then an amendment to a main motion, which seem to be the types of motions that are most frequently raised within this body and within other bodies within the district as well. And so there are 6 steps to handling a motion. After an agenda item is called upon by the chair, any member may, upon being recognized, speak to the question, including making a motion on the question. Once the motion is made, it must be seconded, at which point the chair should recognize the motion and the second and restate the motion for clarity. If the chair's statement of the motion is not what the maker of the motion intended, this would be the time to ask to be recognized and to correct the chair's statement of the motion. We want to make sure that the motion as made is that once we get to debating that motion, that everybody is very clear on what exactly that motion is. Thereafter, the chair must allow debate of the motion before it can be put to a vote. In debating a motion, protocol would also dictate that the maker of the motion gets to begin the debate. But then again, each member may only have one opportunity to speak and deliberate on that motion until all other members wishing to speak have a turn. And then once the chair closes debate on a motion, the chair puts the motion to a vote. So that would be step 5. And assuming there's no motion to amend the vote, which I'll talk about on the next slide, following the vote, the chair should then announce the result of the vote. Motion passes, motion is adopted, words to that effect, and then immediately moves on to the next item of business. Once the chair announces the vote, there's no more discussion on that item. Discussion is closed, no more stray or extraneous comments. It is done, on to the next item. Okay, amending a motion. I think this is a very useful motion that sometimes we operate very informally a lot of times in this body, and sometimes if you have a more formal process of amending a motion, it can allow for much smoother facilitation of the discussion and clear outcomes. And so, for example, before a main motion is voted upon, a member may, upon being recognized again by the chair, move to revise that motion. And once a motion to amend is made, it takes precedence over the main motion and must be dealt with before going back to the main motion. Just like a main motion, a motion to amend requires a second, requires debate, etc. And so the way amending a motion works is that you have a main motion. Just kind of drawing from the last meeting a little bit, I believe it was Mr. Leba moved, or perhaps it was somebody moved, I can't remember who, moved to that the draft goals and objectives for 2022 be adopted. And then as part of that main motion, there was a discussion, I think at that point, Mr. Leba brought up a discussion of wanting to amend the motion to add health outcomes as one of the main objectives. And so a member prefers a revision to these goals and objectives. And so that member then, after the main motion is made, asks to be recognized and moves to amend the motion by revising the goals and objectives to include XYZ, the additional language that you would like to use to amend the main motion. You can also use a motion to amend to strike language from the original motion. That motion to amend must be seconded. It's necessary to second motions to prevent motions from moving forward that only one person favors. You can debate it and then vote on the motion to amend. And if the motion to amend is adopted, then the chair redirects, returns to the main motion as amended, and you can move forward continuing to debate that motion and voting on it as amended. Okay, a couple other useful techniques also that I wanted to just bring up to you. One is a motion to postpone. If you believe the board needs more time to obtain information to make an intelligent decision, or for example, if a board member who would vote your way on a particular motion is absent from a meeting, you can move to postpone to the next meeting. Again, this is, and you can only postpone to the very next meeting. You can't postpone indefinitely. You can't postpone to, 2 meetings into the future. The most you can postpone it to is to the very next meeting. And like other main motions, a motion to postpone also requires a second. It requires debate. It requires a majority vote. And then another useful technique that you might find would be called for in a particular circumstance is if you believe a rule of order has been violated. And this is one of the rare occasions when you actually can interrupt the speaker. And you do so without waiting to be recognized. The first words out of your mouth have to be point of order. A member calls out point of order. At that point, the chair listens to the complaint and rules on whether there is a violation. Point well taken, not well taken. If the member or any other member of the body disagrees with the chair's ruling, the member may call out, "I appeal from the decision of the chair." And if appealed, the chair explains the reason for the ruling. At that time, each member who wishes may debate one time. The chair speaks a second time, giving a closing argument, and a vote is taken on shall the decision of the chair be sustained. Only a majority of the negative will overturn the ruling of the chair. And so that's pretty much all I had to cover today. I wanted this to be just sort of a brief high-level overview. I will say that this body has traditionally operated very informally, and certainly the chair has the prerogative to allow more informal procedures if he or she chooses. However, if at any time during a meeting, the meeting kind of disintegrates into chaos or lack of order prevents business from actually being transacted, then the chair would be encouraged to return to formal meeting rules and advise members that parliamentary rules are in place. Again, there are many other different types of motions that are available in Robert's Rules of Order. I would encourage you all to educate yourself further on Robert's Rules, just kind of refresh your memory. I have my little Robert's Rules of Order book that's, like I said, it's very falling apart and tabbed and dog-eared and has notes in it. You can also you can purchase your own Robert's Rules of Order through Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Also, the California Special District Association's website has a very quick reference guide on parliamentary procedure that's available on their website for download. So there's a lot of different resources, and if you're concerned or worried or would like to locate some different resources, feel free to reach out to me, and I can help guide you into some different directions for educating yourself further on it. Again, I think the more knowledgeable you are in Robert's Rules, the more effective you can be in both protecting your rights as a member, as well as advocating for your interests and motives as a member of the EJAG. So that's all I had to share. I hope you found it useful. And if you have any questions or comments. Thank you.
I will open it up for comments or questions, but before I will just say thank you very much. It was very informative. Definitely, I will follow the advice and buy my book. But this has been a good refresher of this, and hopefully can help us have productive and meetings that are following these rules in the future. Thank you. Any questions or comments about this update?
Naomi? Yeah, this is Manuel. I have to learn on my computer to raise hands, and I got to figure out where that's at. I'm going to ask my staff because
Just raise your physical hand, no problem. Go ahead.
This still works.
I'm still trying to find it. But first place, thank you very, very much, Naomi, for having this done this evening. I think it's been great. It also helped me a little bit on the CAC. And so I think that's good. And we will be having this done to the CAC as well. I think on, and what the CAC, what the members are supposed to do when they leave the meeting, how they're to help communicate. So first thing, but the one thing when you started going through that, you brought back some Parley Pro procedures in FFA when I used to lead a team up at Sierra High School in Parley Pro FFA kids. So you brought back some great memories of debate. And,
Well, you're welcome.
but well done. And
My
Naomi,
pleasure.
thank you again for, I know you're not supposed to praise, but again, thank you for having this done tonight. And it just helps us to refresh and become more effective. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for that. And that's the purpose, right? I think we can have more effective meetings and really go to the business of what we are here meeting, or not only tonight, but in future meetings. Derek?
I would just say there's nothing that says we can't praise or give thanks to presenters, staff members, maybe even members of the public for contributing. It just was about not doing that as crosstalk or be amongst the members of the board. But I didn't see anything that said we couldn't praise our staffers and praise people who we're grateful for in the public to come and share. That's all I had to say. Thanks.
That is true.
Manu, do you have another comment? I see you were unmuted. No, I think. Any other comments or questions before we move on to another important item, which is reviewing our bylaws? And will that be presented also by you?
No, it will not.
Actually, I'm going to handle that one, Naomi.
Well, thank you again for that great presentation.
Thank you.
All righty. I think at the last meeting, there was also a recommendation for us to kind of go back and review kind of the charge of EJAG. And I thought that was a great idea. And then when we had talked with Naomi after that meeting and kind of conceptualized this agenda, she wanted to prioritize this item as well. So I think it'll be a good refresher. There are some members on EJAG who have been around since, if not the very beginning, very near the beginning. And so I think it'll be a good opportunity for those as well to share their perspectives and maybe the way in which these bylaws and the duties of EJAG have worked over the years. And so with that, I kind of will keep it at a pretty high level, but we can get into more details if there's specific questions. And so where EJAG kind of starts is really with the district's environmental justice strategy. So back in the summer of 2007, the district's governing board adopted the environmental justice strategy. That strategy was developed following almost 3 years of collaboration with environmental justice advocates here in the Valley, and was really aimed at how the district could continue to incorporate environmental justice principles into the programs that we had here in the Valley, and how we could, build off of that moving forward, and also included some new initiatives as part of that. Since that time, that strategy has been amended and updated 3 times. Most recently was back in 2015. And I'm sure at some point in the near future, we'll likely be back to that strategy again. I'm looking for some potential amendments. And I think as part of the goal and action items that were added last year, I think the EJAG will play a big role in that. One of the most important things that strategy did was to establish the Environmental Justice Advisory Group. And it basically established both the framework for that group as well as kind of the charge of that group. And EJAG was created as really a forum to gather input that the district may not otherwise obtain, and promoting participation from residents who might not otherwise participate in district events. And over the years, I think at times we've been very successful in working with EJAG to do that. At other times, I don't know that I think there can always be some enhancements there. I definitely think during the pandemic, we've seen our public participation levels really drop off. And I think as we move forward, that's definitely a focus that I think all of us need to have on how we kind of get back to this charge of getting the residents, getting the public engaged again. Hopefully at our meetings, if not at our meetings, then through other avenues. The group is an advisory body. It has an advisory role to provide advice, direction, and critique of the district programs concerning our continuing efforts to advance environmental justice. And it does not have any, direct regulatory or administrative role in the district's permitting, enforcement, planning, or rulemaking activities. As part of that strategy, the board put forth specific duties that the EJAG is kind of responsible for, and I'll run through those. First off is to advise the district in identifying opportunities for providing compliance assistance to businesses that impact ethnic or low-income communities. And over the years, EJAG has been a great partner of the district in terms of both in terms of evaluating compliance assistance outreach materials that we have, at times helping making sure that the messaging is something that will be effective in reaching the targeted audiences within the communities that we're looking at, as well as especially as we look at translating documents into Spanish in particular, and perhaps other languages in the future, and providing assistance to our Spanish-speaking staff that we have here in working through how to best target those audiences as well. The second kind of duty that had been given to the EJAG was to advise the district in promoting community outreach efforts and in identifying opportunities and strategies for increasing participation by ethnic and low-income communities in air quality management. And again, this is something that we over the years, EJAG has played a vital role in looking at a lot of the outreach materials we have. That's one of the reasons why our OC group often will come and share things that we're doing here, both particular materials that we're using as well as strategies. And I think based on the feedback that we get from EJAG members, we often will update or revise the materials that we have and otherwise enhance those materials. And I think it's been very helpful over the years. And that's something that we continue to look to EJAG for assistance on. The third duty was to advise the district in increasing meaningful community participation by providing public venues and opportunities for community involvement. And we've done this at times over the years as we've had particular events that we may be working on, either at times we've done symposium or other conferences, and we've worked with some members of EJAG to help facilitate those. We've also worked with members of EJAG to support some of our grant program events and otherwise. And so a lot of these aren't like an everyday thing, but as the need comes up, we'll bring those to EJAG or work with individual EJAG members, and they've been of great help. Number 4 is to advise the district on strategies for continued improvements in outreach and communication with all Valley residents, focusing on, again, ethnic and low-income communities. So you can see the early parts, we were really focusing on how EJAG can help the district effectively communicate and enhance participation and engagement in communities that may not have been as active in the past. Generally no fault of their own, but just for lack of knowing what we were doing or understanding the processes that we had going on. And so EJAG was really formed to help find inroads into those communities and enhance participation and engagement in the efforts that we're doing there. Number 5 was to advise the district in implementing public education outreach programs for community members, very similar to the ones we've talked about. Number 6 was to compile and present an annual strategic update to the Citizens Advisory Committee. As you may recall, in the early days of EJAG, EJAG actually used to report to the Citizens Advisory Committee, and so there was a big part of that was preparing reports and other updates to the CAC. That changed back in 2015 when the EJAG reporting relationship was changed to be directly to the governing board. Although this still remains one of the objectives. And I think the last one we did was in 2018. We probably need to get back to doing these, and I think we'll probably start again either at the end of this year or early next year in putting these updates together again. And mainly what that was is it was an inventory of the work that EJAG had done in the last year, and perhaps some of the focus of the things to come in the following year. In terms of the meeting frequency, the strategy calls for the group to meet at least quarterly. As we currently sit, we meet every 2 months. That was kind of agreed to over time. In the very early days of EJAG, they met every single month. But at some point in time, several years in, the membership decided that they preferred to meet every other month. And so that's how we've landed here on the every other month. Generally, we talk about this, the reporting to the CAC as necessary. That's one of the duties there. Number 9 is to advise the district in the development of analytical tools and training protocols to aid the district in addressing the needs of EJ communities. This has taken many forms over the years. One of the big efforts that was a multi-year effort was EJAG played a very vital role in developing the first environmental justice grant map, the map we used for which communities would be considered environmental justice for prioritizing grant funding. And then later on, several years later, played a big role in our transition to using CalEnviroScreen to serve, ultimately in the future as that tool. And then lastly, in terms of the strategy, the last established goal was to for the group to actually establish goals and objectives each year and an action plan to achieve those goals and objectives, with the provision that the goals and objectives must strictly adhere to the strategy and to the duties that have been prescribed by the governing board. There is one, what I call an extra function. It's not specifically in the EJ strategy, but it's something that the governing board has tasked the EJAG with, and that's that each year the governing board seeks input from EJAG on the prioritization of grant funding. And so each year the group will usually establish an ad hoc subcommittee that'll meet and look over in individual programs that we have here at the district and figure out which ones are of a priority for EJAG and in priority for environmental justice and low-income communities here in the Valley. And then those goals, after they're adopted by EJAG, are sent to our governing board, and they're used as part of establishing the district's incentive spending plan each year. And actually, a later agenda item on this one is to appoint that committee. That committee usually meets in January of each year. So that's kind of the extra item, I call it. And then in terms of the bylaws, for the first couple of years the EJAG functioned, it actually didn't have any governing bylaws. But then with the group, the decision was made that it'd be helpful to have some basic rules for conduct of EJAG. And so at the time, EJAG formed a subcommittee, worked with the district, came forward with a recommended set of bylaws that then went to the governing board in February of 2010, and the governing board ultimately adopted those bylaws, which are basically the basic rules for how EJAG conducts business. And those bylaws were last amended in May of 2015, and that action was the one I spoke about, which changed the reporting relationship of EJAG. So in terms of the reporting relationship, EJAG does directly report to the governing board. At times, they also report directly to the Air Pollution Control Officer upon request of the APCO. So there may be times where the APCO has a specific request of EJAG, will ask for advice or critique or direction. And under those circumstances, often the EJAG will provide their advice or report directly back to the APCO. In terms of the functioning of it, EJAG is a Brown Act body, which basically means that it has to comply with the open meeting laws. So all of these meetings are publicly noticed. They're open to the public. We have to have materials posted a certain amount of days or hours before the meeting. There can't be communication of board members outside of these meetings. Can't be groups of board members getting together outside of these meetings such that it would create a quorum and have issues. So it's just a set of rules that control the operation of public bodies. As you know, we usually have refreshers on the Brown Act periodically that you guys will attend, or perhaps you attend them as part of other groups that you guys participate with. And as Annette talked about, all the meetings shall be conducted in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order. Then just a couple other quick details. I think sometimes we take this for granted, but I just want to make sure everyone is just aware of structurally how EJAG works. But the total membership of EJAG is 13 members. Each member serve 2-year terms at the pleasure of the governing board. There are 8 at-large members. 1 represents each of the counties within the Valley Air Basin, so from San Joaquin County down to Kern County. There are 2 ethnic small business owner representatives or positions, and there are 3 CAC members, 1 from each of the CAC interest groups. So 1 from the city municipal group, 1 from the industry ag group, and 1 from the environmental interest group of CAC. In terms of the organization of the group itself, there obviously is a chair that's elected by majority vote of EJAG to serve a 2-year term, and a vice chair that's elected by EJAG to serve a 1-year term. In terms of the roles, in addition to all the stuff Annette talked about in terms of managing the meetings and whatnot, the chair also is responsible for working with the district to establish the agendas that we do each every meeting, and so they play a role in soliciting feedback from other members that we have, and then as well as ideas that they may have, ideas that district staff may have, and coalescing that into an agenda that we put forward. And in terms of quorum and voting, just because this comes up every once in a while, the quorum rules for EJAG are a simple majority of current membership. So currently, right now, we have 12 members, which means that we have to have 7 members present to have a quorum and be able to conduct business. And then any action of EJAG requires a simple majority of the members present. So it doesn't require a majority of all appointed membership, just the members present at that meeting, assuming there is a quorum. So that's kind of at a high level, why we have an EJAG, the really the charge that the governing board has given EJAG, and like I said, they've really played a really pivotal role over the years, and tailoring a lot of our outreach materials, tailoring a lot of our compliance assistance materials, working to ensure that our grant programs are serving our disadvantaged, environmental justice, low-income communities, and advocating, often at the state and federal level to bring additional funding to the Valley, especially funding to those same communities. And so it's been a very pivotal role that the group has played historically, and I think it's well positioned to continue to play, I think, a pivotal role as we move forward. So hopefully that gives a pretty good overview of what EJAG is, why it was created, why we're here, and I obviously will be open to, or hoping that I can answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Morgan. That was very informative as well. Any questions or comments about this bylaws refresher? Go ahead, Derek.
So Morgan, I kind of remembered, and I'm reviewing what you just posted, but I seem to recall in the early days of EJAG, one of the things that the members talked about as a purpose for EJAG was also to basically have our eye on what was coming out of the district in the ways, by ways of rules and regulations? And would they have an unfair or negative impact on the environmental justice communities? But I don't see that articulated in what was presented tonight.
Yeah, that's not a direct charge of EJAG from the governing board. It's not part of our environmental justice strategy. Now, I do think it's always important, and I think, to the extent that the EJAG, I mean, that we do provide a plan and rule update here. I mean, we want input from EJAG on those areas, and so I think, to the extent that there is critique or suggestions or otherwise on the things that we're doing in that realm, but particularly there is no direct legislative or administrative role in that process for EJAG, and that was the way it was created by the board. And so but as we say, as we often do as part of that rule and plan summary, we bring that update here, so we can get feedback from the group on some of the actions that we are taking.
Okay, I appreciate that. One of the things that really drew me to EJAG in the beginning, clear back in 2009 and 10, was the sort of the maybe not in here, but the actual definition of environmental justice going into it, not necessarily with the air district, but just overall, was so many people got these different groups started because of things that where you had unfair treatment. And we're talking about, high cancer causing power lines going through environmental justice communities, right through the schoolyards, things like that. There were so many different things that were done that where nobody was advocating for those communities until the environmental justice movement really got started. And it was really excellent that we did that here, but I've always felt that was a key, not just to hear what's going on, but when we provide feedback to the district, if we see anything that we think might be a negative or not really fair to those communities, this is the place for us to be able to share, or the public to be able to come and share with the district. And I appreciate that you've always allowed that, and that would continue. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek, and I agree with your comment and share the same sentiments. Frankly, that was one of the reasons that I decided to apply to be here, because of those communities that you're referring to, that rural residents of rural communities, farm workers, people that normally do not have the ability to come to these meetings or to follow what is happening because they're working, they don't speak English, they are not really able to participate in a meaningful way. So even though it's not like something that is part of the bylaws, I believe it has, in a way, EJAG has served that role. So I agree. Any other questions or comments for Morgan? I don't see any hands raised, so I think we're ready to move on to the AB 617 update.
Yes, hello and good evening. My name is Jessica Olson. I am the Director of Community Strategies and Resources here at the district. And sort of in looking at the agenda and preparing my update today, I wanted to, we're kind of taking a look back and we're kind of resetting ourselves, it feels like, with some of the agenda topics today. And so with that, I wanted to take the opportunity to share sort of a little higher level and a little bit more of a review of everything that's been going on in 617. I think typically I just sort of share recent updates, but I'm also happy, I will be sharing some recent updates. And of course, at the end, happy to take questions and comments from the rest of the group. So with that, just as a reminder, we operate in 4 CARB selected communities. And so South Central Fresno and Shafter are here on the left. Those were selected in year 1. Stockton was selected in year 2, and Arvin Lamont was selected in year 3. And I have an update I'll share with you in just a moment about Arvin Lamont. But you can see here, this is just a nice summary of all of the different adopted measures that all of the CSCs or community steering committees, along with CARB, other agency partners, lots of stakeholders in these communities, and of course the Air District put together to achieve the total emissions reductions that you see there on the bottom lines. And so with that, all of these different, what we call CERPs, or community emissions reduction programs, all of these measures have to go and be not only adopted by the district, but approved by CARB. So I am happy to announce that on October 13th, and I'll brag just a little bit about the community members here in Arvin Lamont, not only did CARB unanimously approve the CERP, but they, and I can say this officially, they said it was the best CERP that they had seen yet. And it was just a testament to all of the hard work of the community members, many of whom came to the meeting and spoke on behalf of the CERP. And we do have co-leads, so it operates a little differently than other communities. And both those co-leads, one is Gustavo Aguirre Jr. with CCEJN, and the other is Bianca Santoyo. She is a resident, and it was just a great, not only lift on the resident and community members' parts, but really all of the stakeholders involved and all of the agencies that made commitments in that CERP. Moving forward, though, we wanted to share with you just a little bit of what's going on across the valley in all of the different communities, and kind of share a little bit of what happens when we adopt these CERPs. So a lot of the CERPs, those measures that I mentioned earlier, many of them are incentives-based measures. And so we have been going through a process really over the past several years, and certainly in Fresno and Shafter, who have had adopted CERPs in place for a really long time now, several years now, to work with CARB to get projects approved. And what I mean by that is a lot of the CERPs include a lot of innovative projects that were not really considered when CARB adopted their funding guidelines. And so we have to work closely with the communities and with CARB to get community identified projects approved. So that second column just represents a lot of work that's already been done by the community members and by district staff and by other stakeholders to get those approved by CARB. And you can see here the other 2 columns are just some, where we still have to go and some of the work that's ahead of us. Of course, those community identified projects, we have already had a lot of success. Here on the left, we have kicked off finally after many, many months working really closely with community members in the city, a truck reroute and health study in South Central Fresno. Here in the center, you see a lawnmower exchange event for community residents. We've done one in Shafter and one in Fresno. And then here on the right, this was actually a completed measure we committed to and successfully replaced 25 nut harvesters with low dust equipment in Shafter, which was a really high priority measure for the Shafter residents. And then one quick recent update is on Saturday, we have another exchange event. We have already 250 residents within the South Central Fresno community signed up to get a gas mower exchanged at no cost to them with an electric lawnmower. So just an example of some of the successful projects we've been moving forward. A really just high level look at how we've spent the community air protection funds across the valley. Here on the left, this is the total cap and match fund. So of course, the funding doesn't fund 100% of whatever we're replacing. Oftentimes it's matched with funding from maybe the entity or even the resident that we are working with for that particular measure. And you could see here, we've achieved over 8,000 tons of total NOx, PM 2.5 and VOC reductions. The center column here is just a sampling. In addition to the examples I just shared, we've also done school buses, off-road diesel vehicles, primarily tractors. I've already shared lawnmowers, and we're going to add 250 to that number just on Saturday morning, and of course, wood-burning devices. But then I also want to emphasize that the measures aren't just focused on incentives. We do have measures that focus on regulations, that focus on enforcement, and here on the right, it's just a summary of what we've done since AB 617 launched in our regulatory enforcement and outreach efforts. And of course, it's more than just the emissions reduction programs. All 4 of those communities, when you are selected by CARB, you can either be for an emissions reduction program or a monitoring program, or both. And all 4 of our communities were fortunate enough to be selected for both. And so this is just an example. I share this almost every time, but just a reminder that each community has real-time air quality information. We are about, I'd say, a third of the way through of launching this exact type of monitoring system in Arvin, which is, of course, our newest community. I wanted to share pictures that I don't think I've shared pictures in a while with you all. And these are all, believe it or not, even despite a lot of the virtual efforts, these are all pictures within the past 12 months that we've taken of interacting face-to-face with community members, whether it's here up on the upper left-hand corner, some partnerships at community schools where we've worked with community members to identify schools within the area that can use handouts to remind folks not to idle, but also to remind them of other opportunities within their area. So the upper left-hand corner is South Central Fresno. Upper right-hand corner, these are community residents working in Shafter to help us feed folks that came to our lawnmower event. The bottom left-hand corner, you can see, I think you might even see some familiar faces on this call for some organizations that we've worked with to even provide mini grants for them to do some community work in their communities. The bottom center is us passing out an electric lawnmower. That's us in action, and that's actually Samir, if you recognize him there, helping load a lawnmower into a resident's car. And then here in the bottom right-hand corner, these are community members working with us in Arvin, and I did share that back in April. We had an in-person meeting in Arvin to build capacity and to work on the CERP face-to-face. I shared this slide. It is not comprehensive. There are so many residents that don't have logos, right? And many other stakeholders and businesses that work with us. But just a sampling of a lot of folks we worked with. I shared this with CARB just a couple of weeks ago when we adopted the CERP, just to share with them all of the different folks it takes to do all of this work. And just wanted to thank all of you. And of course, all the folks on this slide for all of the hard work, which is super key to our success. And then just, I'll really quickly, I'm not here to dive into it, but I'm certainly happy to answer questions. I wanted to share with you that we have learned lessons. We're moving forward on a lot of different aspects, including working with CARB to streamline that project plan development slide that I showed you earlier. As of right now, it's not super streamlined on maybe on the state side as much as we think it could be. So we're working with them to make that easier for community members to get the incentives that they put in their CERPs, and also to work with community members on these next 2 bullets, which are continuous evaluation and shifting funds, which CSC supported funding shifts have happened in almost every community at this point, as well as identifying new measures. And then of course, as always, we want to provide equal access for all. We provide language interpretation in both Spanish and in American Sign Language, depending on which community. And actually last night in Arvin, Lamont, we conducted an entire discussion. It was actually the meeting was facilitated in Spanish. And so just trying to make it equitable and make sure that folks have an opportunity to participate in a way that they are comfortable with. So with that, I know it's a little different than typical, but I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments. Thank you, Naimeen.
Thank you, Jessica. Put it all together, it feels like we have been busy in the last 3-4 years, right? SP and everybody.
Absolutely.
Else. Questions or comments for Jessica about AB 617? Tremendous work. Well, I don't see any hands. I just want to say again, thank you. That was a great presentation, and I know it has taken a lot of effort also and a burden on the Air District staff. So thank you for putting up with all these, monthly meetings. I think, what are we in what number meeting is in Fresno? 50?
We're on 51 or 2, and that's just the CSC meetings. I think if you count agenda settings, we're over 100 in Fresno. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just an idea of all the work they have been doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so moving on. Now it's an important item we need to discuss, which is appointing our subcommittee or ad hoc committee that will help with the grants. As Morgan mentioned, that will happen in January, if I'm correct. Is that right?
Yeah, maybe just a little bit of info as you guys consider this. So it will be the grants committee generally meets in the afternoon right before the regularly scheduled EJAG meeting. So I forget if it's usually, I think it's at 4 o'clock, I believe. that day. So a little bit earlier in the day. So, if you're interested, just make sure you can kind of plan for that and have a little bit of flexibility there. We can have up to 6 members that are on there. Can't have 7 because then we get into quorum, we become a quorum, and that becomes problematic. And in terms of appointing, generally what has happened is the chair will consider people who are interested, and then it doesn't take a formal vote by the body. It's kind of at the chair's discretion to appoint those members, but usually we have the ability to appoint the people who are interested. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Naimeen.
Sure. Well, can I hear if there's interest from some of you to serve in that grants ad hoc group? SB, you want to volunteer?
Yeah, I'd like to volunteer.
Derek?
This is Tom. Oh, sorry. This is Tom, and I will volunteer as well.
Okay, we see Derek. So SP, Derek, Tom. We can have up to 6. So any other members that would like to join this ad hoc committee?
Naimeen, if
Go ahead.
if you need, I'd be happy to help as whatever I can. Okay. And
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. So we have 4, and I will add my name to that list. So that's 5. So we already have 5 names, Morgan. So I think if someone else later on, reconsiders and wants to join, how do we do that? Do we have an email sent to you, me, or both?
Probably they could probably send it to you or to the clerk, to Adriana, and then we can. I mean, you and I can talk, and we can figure out if we have more than one. We can figure out who to appoint.
Yeah. So just to recap, we have 5 members right now. We just need 1 more. So if you would like to serve, please send me an email, and we'll go from there.
Perhaps through the chair, since we do have some, quite a few members who aren't here today, maybe we can send out an email to those other members and let them know that, if they're interested, we have one more spot, and see if anyone's interested.
That's a great suggestion. Do you do that, or the email comes from me?
No, I can have the clerk send it out on your behalf.
Thank
Naimeen,
Yes.
if in fact you get some of those people that Morgan just suggested, that if they call in, and if you have 2 of them, if you would like to bring someone new and helping to do that, I'd be happy to let that go. But if that doesn't happen, I'm happy to serve. Okay, I'll leave that up to you. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that flexibility. We'll take that into consideration. Thank you. Okay. We're ready to move on, and now is the next agenda item is to have or hear from you any ideas, recommendations for future meeting items. So there were some questions and comments made before, but do you want to make a formal recommendation of adding any of those questions or comments to transform them into agenda items, Derek?
Yeah, what was the, Morgan, refresh my memory. Earlier, we mentioned about the Brown Act refreshers. And I know we had talked about, we used to do that every year or 2. Are we still going to be doing that like we used to?
Yeah, I'll have to check with our council on that. I know at times we've done it at the meeting, and other times we've allowed people just to go on and sit through like a video course to do it. I'll have to look at see when the last time we did that was, and if we're due for that, and what forum is the best for that.
Isn't that the one that's actually, isn't it actually required that we do that? And I think we were taking that class through the special districts organization had that available for us. And then we could get our little certificate that was sent in to the district. But I thought that was actually required.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
we would get a reminder when our certificate was about to expire, so we could do that again.
And it's been a while, it seems like, because with COVID and everything.
Yeah, I don't recall, and I apologize. I'll have to look into it. I don't recall if the Brown Act one was required. I know the ethics training is
Oh,
required.
that's,
If
maybe it's the
that-
ethics training.
Yeah, and so that one hasn't been, so usually the requirement for that one though is only for board members that are going to receive reimbursement for like their travel, because as you know, as an EJAG member, you know, when we come in person to meetings, you are eligible to receive reimbursement for your travel expenses. You can submit your mileage and we reimburse you for that. But in order to receive that you have to go through the ethics training. And so that is obviously during COVID, there hasn't been any mileage reimbursement or travel for these meetings required. So, but as we emerge out of COVID, that's definitely something that's a good reminder. We need to look into that and likely get that kind of rescheduled again. So I will definitely follow up on both those two items.
Thank you. Other topics?
Through the chair, I just wanted to maybe there's definitely one which will be the goals and objectives. We didn't bring that back to this meeting, but I wanted to probably just take a quick topic or time to talk about it too. We're still working through the recommendations that the group had at the last meeting. It was, you know, that's probably the most detailed and comprehensive goal that's been recommended probably since we first started all the recommendations way back when. And so we're working through that and figuring out a path. I think we definitely feel that there's room to get the spirit of what the group I think is looking for into a recommendation. You know, exactly how that you know comes out in terms of the actual specifics of the goals and how specific it is, or how much room there is for potentially different options. That's what we're still looking for, but we plan on having that to bring back at the next meeting, as well as there's usually a tentative item at that meeting on for the grant committee. You know, depending on you know, if there's a need for more than one subcommittee meeting. Sometimes within that first meeting they come forward with their recommendations and we bring that to the group and we take action on it. Other times it takes a couple of meetings. So just depending on that, there'll likely be a tentative item for that.
Thank you. That was a question I had. So thank you for the update that we will get on. You know, I guess would that be like if Samir had approved or have any recommendations for us in terms of that particular objective or the whole plan?
Yeah, it'll be the whole plan. We'll bring back that, and then probably need to have a discussion as to whether you know, that we took a lot of time this year in discussing the plan. At that point, if we have something that we get to where we approve it, do we want to have that, you know, stand as the goal for that next year, or do we want to, you know, start that process and again come January, February, and start those discussions again, and probably have that discussion at that time as well.
Yep. Yeah, we're 1 year behind, so definitely we'll have to make that decision. I have another question or suggestion. I don't know if as part of the rules and the items that we normally get, the rules and attainment plans, if we can also hear an update specifically about the SIP 2012 plan that I believe was recently withdrawn, both by CARB and the Air District from EPA. If we can hear an update on that.
Yeah, I think we could probably do that at that time. I mean, there'll be a couple of months removed from everything that's happening right now, so it'll probably be a good chance to have an update on kind of what it's looking like and what the plan, no pun intended, is you know, moving forward for how to resolve those issues.
Right. Derek, you have another?
Yeah, I almost hesitated to bring it up, but it wouldn't hurt. We've got a pretty good group that's pretty good on their attendance, but whenever the chair thinks that it's appropriate, if you start seeing members missing too many meetings, it wouldn't hurt to have a little a little pep talk from the chairman, from the chair, reminding everybody of the importance of attending these meetings and the fact that if you miss 3 meetings, you can actually be released from the group by at the chair's recommendation. So it is important if we're going to be taking these seats that we are at these meetings. And I just, whenever you think it's right to do it, I just kind of wanted to plant that seed.
No, that's a good point. Definitely we want to have consistent participation so that, you know, we have more productive meetings. So absolutely, I think starting the new year would be a good task to do. Anything else? If not, I think we have a good list of items. We're gonna be busy in January for sure. If not, can we see if there's anyone in attendance from the public that would like to make a public comment?
Through to the chair, we still do not have any members of the public present.
Thank you. Any members from the EJAG now before we adjourn the meeting?
Just one comment. Are we going to be making a presentation to the CAC or to the board or to the governing board? Usually we don't, but will you let us know so we can have a volunteer lined up?
Yeah, we took those 2 items off the agenda just because I think it's probably best that just we work with the chair on those particular ones and those items. I provided the goals and objectives are done in January, I expect that we'll go to the governing board at that point and likely probably the CAC as well. So we can definitely work, but I don't think there'll be any update out of this meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's the last item in our agenda. And if there's no other questions or comments from EJAG members, I think we're ready to adjourn our meeting with record time, being 6:59.
Naomi, I'll take your last 20 seconds and say thank you very much for a great meeting tonight. I think, again, the bylaws and all of those good things and the Robert's Rules of Order, I think all of those will be very helpful. And I would hope that our other members that didn't attend, that maybe we can try to get them involved in understanding that. But great job on the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Well, I appreciate all your attendance and I wish you a good evening and I'll see you in January. Thank you.
I just wanted to, just on behalf of the district, that is, since we won't see each other, at least in this capacity again, I'm sure we'll see each other in other capacities, but, happy holidays, and happy new year. And we look forward, we hope it's we think it's going to be a great 2023. And I think we look forward to good things from this group next year.
Especially since we're going to go back to meeting in person. So I look forward to seeing you all who are in Fresno at the Fresno office or virtually and try that delicious food that you're going to have for us, Morgan. What was the recommendation, Derek? Thank you all.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.